So one of the inspirations for this book is the African-American community, even though this book is for everyone. It's like celebrating the African-American community there, particularly the vegan spin. So like I'm in LA, and so there's a lot of like vegan tacos, vegan Chinese foods, that kind of stuff. In Atlanta, because there's so many Black people, there's a lot of like vegan soul food, vegan Ethiopian food, vegan Jamaican food. So there's a lot of places, particularly in this neighborhood called the West End, where a lot of people are trying to take traditional culinary treats from African-American culture, keep the deliciousness of it, but make it healthier.
Welcome to the world of energy, where science meets spirit. Ancient wisdom merges with cutting-edge knowledge, and the possibilities for a healthier, happier you are endless. Lauren here with another episode of Cool People, Big Ideas. I'm really excited for you all to hear this one. So Will Power is a really good friend of mine. We actually went to NYU together, although we didn't meet at the time. And then flash forward a bunch of years, and our mutual good friend, I always have to call him out, Sean Michael Howard. Hey, Shawnee. Connected us because I was working on some creative projects, some script writing, actually. I wrote a musical. And so he connected me with Will. And Will was just so generous and so amazing. He is such an accomplished performer, producer, writer, playwright, actor, everything. And that he took his time out to speak with me was just so beautiful and generous. And I've had him on 2 summits. And now I needed to bring him back because he just wrote his very first book, Nana's New Soul Food. And so I wanted to bring him on to talk about it. And you are in for a treat beyond a treat. I'm not even going to tell you what the treat is because you just have to listen to this podcast. It's going to be, let me just say this. It will bring a smile to your face and shift your energy. So sit back, relax, and listen to this beautiful podcast with the incredible Will Power. Hi, Will Power. I'm so happy to see you again.
Me too.
It's been a while. Too long.
It's
Too
been
long.
a while.
You've
but I
had so
appreciate
many
you.
creative projects come out.
It's a lot going on, but I want to say I appreciate you. You know, we've stayed in contact. We talked a couple of times during the COVID pandemic, which was, you know, life sustaining or mentally sustaining.
Yes.
So I always appreciate you, and it's good to see you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. And we could talk about all the creative projects that you've got and that have just come out and that are coming out. But what I really want to focus on today, I was so excited when I saw you put the pre-order up for this. This is your new book.
Hey.
And you're going to let us know if this is your first book.
First book. I've had
It's
plays
your first
published.
book.
Yeah, I've had plays published, but it's my first children's book, like in that publishing world. Yeah, the first one. So I'm really excited about that.
Exquisite. Nana's New Soul Food. I ordered it, pre-ordered as soon as you announced it. And so I want to talk about this. It's so beautiful. First of all, it's just beautiful. It feels beautiful. The illustrations by R. Gregory Christie are, I mean, they're just exquisite. Every page is an art gallery. And
he's an incredible
illustrator.
Thank you so much.
How did you connect with him?
You know, it was really interesting. I am definitely not in the children's book world. I'm starting to get into it now. I went to my first book festival, did a performance, did my first librarian conference. You know, librarians are a big deal in the children's book world, you know, so I've always respected librarians. But when I went to this, I'm like, wow, they're like the big wigs in this world of librarians, you know. So I'm starting to make the rounds, but I'm very new to it. I met R. Gregory Christie, the amazing illustrator, through the Alliance Theater. The Alliance Theater, which is a pretty prestigious theater in Atlanta. Yeah. Once a year, they have this really interesting, rather unique program where they commission a playwright once a year to write a children's book for the city of Atlanta. So it's really interesting, you know what I mean? Because they just have a very robust educational department, like more than most theaters. So they're really connected to like schools and the administrators and the school board and all this kind of stuff. So I have a good connection with them. They've produced my work in the past. So the guy, Chris Moses, who's one of the leaders there, he reached out and said, hey, we want to commission you to write this, any children's book you want. I'm like, wow, that sounds great. And so the Alliance Theater and Chris Moses, they brought in R. Gregory Christie. And Christie is a very renowned children's book illustrator. Like he has, I don't know, 30 something credits, something crazy. I want to say he's won a couple of major awards. So that's kind of how we connected, you know. So I wrote this book. It was called initially In the West End. It was for Atlanta audiences. In a nutshell, it came out like May, June 2020, right as COVID was hitting, you know. And usually they do a lot of live events around this, readings, they give it out at flea markets, but all that stuff had to be canceled. They just did online stuff. So it's kind of rough. But then it kind of went on from there. And, you know, I can talk about the evolution of the book, but that's basically where I met R. Gregory Christie, right? Because he's based in Atlanta. I met him through the Alliance Theater.
Okay. Well, so that answers a lot of questions that I had because I read the book. I read it a couple times and while I was reading it, West End, and I know you from New York. So I'm thinking New York, West End. Okay, maybe I'm not quite putting it together. And until I read the notes at the back, I was like, oh, this is in Atlanta. It's a whole different zone. I've never been to that area. So that really explains that piece. And so you started to talk about it. So let's dive into that because, of course, whenever I read a book, especially if I know the author, I'm trying to find out the author's always in there somewhere, right? So I'm wondering, is this you? Are you the little boy? Are you the grandma? Are you the mom? Like, where are you in this? Where did this idea come from? And then we'll talk about the whole food piece, which is huge. So, but where did the idea spark?
That's a really interesting question. I guess I would answer that in two parts. The first is that I lived in Atlanta, too brief, just for 2 years. But it's kind of considered the Mecca of African-American culture. You know what I mean? And to give you an understanding of how many Black people live in Atlanta, when I first moved down there, I was talking to a friend, a theater artist, and he said, listen, there are 500 or I think 600 something thousand people in Atlanta proper. He was like, and 50% are African American. And then he said within the Atlanta metro, there is about 6 million people. If you look at the whole Atlanta metro area, and about 52% are African American. So there's over 3 million Black people that live just in Atlanta. And when I was moving to Atlanta, a lot of, I have, friends of all cultures, but particularly a lot of my friends that are African American was like, oh, my cousin is in Atlanta. Oh, my mother lives in Atlanta. My uncle, my two brothers. I was like, man, a lot of people have relatives in Atlanta. But then I started to put together the numbers, and there's about 38 million African Americans in the United States. And there's 3 million plus in Atlanta. That means 1 out of every 10 African Americans in the whole country live in Atlanta, not even Georgia. So it's a lot of Black people. It's every kind of, it's unlike what we experience even in New York or San Francisco or even LA, So one of the inspirations for this book is the African-American community, even though this book is for everyone. It's like celebrating the African-American community there, particularly the vegan spin. So like I'm in LA, and so there's a lot of like vegan tacos, vegan Chinese foods, that kind of stuff. In Atlanta, because there's so many Black people, there's a lot of like vegan soul food, vegan Ethiopian food, vegan Jamaican food. So there's a lot of places, particularly in this neighborhood called the West End, where a lot of people are trying to take traditional culinary treats from African-American culture, keep the deliciousness of it, but make it healthier. You know what I mean? Make it more plant-based. And so there's a there's a burger place called Slutty Vegan that came out in Atlanta. That's now in like 15 cities all over the country. There's Soul Vegetarian, which is kind of like pretty much the first vegan chain restaurant in the world. You know what I mean? They got places in Africa. They got places in Israel, actually.
Wow.
And all these places. So part of it was a love letter to Atlanta and a celebration of those foods made vegan and the balance of that. The other thing, though, is that I grew up in San Francisco in the Fillmore district, and my mother was definitely a real health nut. You know what I mean? She was probably the first one in the neighborhood to bring home tofu in the 1970s. It was in the Asian community, but she was the first one to cook with tofu. And she was buying vegan desserts when they weren't good. Now vegan desserts are really good, but back then they hadn't been refined. So you're thinking about the 70s, we have some family friends who were like some of the founders of Rainbow, which is a really iconic health food supermarket, years and years before Whole Foods that's still there. So I think San Francisco and the Bay Area was kind of on the forefront, probably along with New York and a few other places, of like health food in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So I was kind of like a part of that. I wasn't vegan growing up, but I became more so later. But that was also my inspiration for this too. And also because, Americans, we don't eat very healthy overall. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We don't eat enough vegetables. We don't eat enough unprocessed food. So it's kind of my love letter to this kind of living, and just not in a preachy way, just to encourage it, So back to your question, where am I? I guess I'm a little bit of the boy, and I guess I'm a little bit of the mother, I guess. I never thought about it in that way, but I guess I'm probably a little bit more of the boy than the mother, you know what I mean? Because my mother, I was tagging along with her to like see Dick Gregory speak and Bahamian diet, shakes and all those things, and I think we were kind of ahead. San Francisco was kind of ahead with some of that stuff,
Yeah. Wow. That's so interesting. And, fascinating that I'm surprised, I've just got to say this, that there is such a big vegan community in Atlanta, just because I'm fascinated that there's a big vegan community really anywhere.
Right.
That, there's vegan, there's a vegan restaurant here or there, but like a whole community, you're talking about like that there's all different kinds of foods and all of these different options that are vegan. Like I've never seen that anywhere except maybe in LA. If you really go look for it, you can find the vegan this and that and that, but not even in New York and, Chicago, any other big cities. But I've never seen like a full vegan culture the way you're talking about in Atlanta. That's really surprising and awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I don't know why, not all, but a lot of these restaurants, we changed the names, but they're all kind of based on, like Queen of Wraps is based on a place there. The other one is based on a place. So I don't know why a lot of them are in the West End, which is one neighborhood, because there's people all over the place. But it's an historical community. And I used to frequent them frequently because I used to work at Spelman College, which is a historically Black school that's in the West End. So during lunch or whatever, I would like run out to one of these vegan places. And it's really interesting. Again, in Atlanta, part of it is a critical mass because there's so many African Americans. Like I said, there's African American meat eaters. There's rich African Americans, poor African Americans. There's a lot of homophobia there, but it's also the capital of like LGBTQ Black Americans. Like probably New York or San Francisco is probably for white people, probably, but for Atlanta, the gay capital is black people is Atlanta, even though there's also a big church, Christian homophobic type thing there too. So it's like a lot of everything, and I think you're right. I think LA probably has more of it because LA also has a couple of vegan soul food restaurants in more Black communities like Inglewood, but LA also has like vegan Mexican food and vegan Ecuadorian food and vegan upscale, vegan low scale. It's a lot here. It's more spread out geographically because LA is spread out. But every place has some things though. San Diego has some stuff, San Francisco, Chicago. Every city has some vegan restaurants and some different offerings. But yeah, Atlanta has a lot. And a lot of them tend to be, like I said, vegan soul food, vegan jerk chicken, Jamaican, vegan patties, vegan. I'm getting hungry right now talking about.
I know, seriously.
I didn't have lunch today.
I mean, reading this book, I was getting hungry. And I'm glad that you said that because I was wondering, I have that in my notes as a question. Is Queen Wraps a real place? So you said that you changed the names of those. But I love that. And one of the things that I really love, so I shared with you at the beginning, the co-owner of our company, Energy Medicine Yoga, is a vegan. And I don't know if I shared that with you, but she has talked to me about the Slutty Burger restaurant. Like she knows about
Slutty
that.
Vegan, yeah.
Slutty Vegan.
That's all from Atlanta.
That's
from Atlanta, yeah.
Okay, I don't know if she knew that. We'll have to ask her after. But so we've talked a lot because I'm kind of an omnivore. She's a vegan, but we've talked a lot about food and food choices and why we make these choices. So I want to talk about this in this book. You made a really specific choice about why you are advocating for a vegan diet in this. And so do you want to talk about that a little bit? Like why is
Yeah.
the little boy here advocating for a vegan diet?
So in the story, what happens is that we get introduced at the top of the tale to a grandmother and a grandson. They have this deep, beautiful connection, like a lot of grandmothers do with their grandchildren, you know. And one of the ways, not the only way, but one of the ways they bond is around food. You know, like the grandmother loves to cook and the grandson loves to eat. So his favorite foods are the things that his grandmother makes. And it's a way that they bond. And this is true in a lot of families, even beyond African-American culture. A lot of times we bond around cultural foods, you know, which is also part of the reason why it's hard to give up or think about changing it. Because when we eat something from we're Italian, we eat something from that, or Jewish, or, you know what I mean, Mexican or whatever, a lot of times we remember childhood memories. It's not just the sustenance that the food have. It's like this joy that we get, as we should, right?
Yeah.
So they have this bond, but what happens is the grandmother gets sick. We don't know what she gets sick from. Maybe it's diabetes. Maybe she had a stroke. We don't know. But the doctor's like, you have to change your diet. You know what I mean? You have to change your diet. If you want to be around and see the kid graduate, you got to change your diet. So the grandmother's like, I don't know what to do. I've always cooked this way. And so the grandson's like, well, I'm going to go out into the neighborhood and I'm going to find you delicious vegan treats and healthy treats that you can eat to give you ideas so then you can cook your own stuff. So he goes out with his mother and he goes to all these places in this neighborhood, you know. And again, in the book, it's the West End, but it could be the Village in New York City or the Mission District in San Francisco or the South Side of Chicago, wherever people are like trying to do these things, you know. So that's kind of the impetus of the book. And I know with my wife, you know, when she tried to change her diet habits, you know, I'm not completely vegan. I'm like 95% vegan. She's not completely vegan, but she's mostly vegan. But when for a while, we were completely vegan, and we can talk about that too. But when she changed, what helped her is that her mother started to make traditional Mexican food vegan. Like instead of chorizo, she started making chorizo, you know what I mean, with soy. And that helped her, you know what I mean? That helped my wife make that transition, you know? I'll speak for African Americans in particular. We got some good food, you know, but it's not always the healthiest. And, you know, it comes out of another time where we took whatever we had, flour and water, made butter, made biscuits, you know what I mean? And, you know, one of the cuisines, for example, is pig feet, you know, which we call chitlins. And I don't know if you've ever, we never made those in my house, but I've been in some houses growing up with chitlins, and it's the most horrible smell. It's basically chitlins of pig guts, you know what I mean? And you clean them out and you put them in a pot, and it's just the most horrible smell. Supposedly they taste good. I've never tasted them, but the smell was atrocious. But the thing is, the pig guts were from, you know, days when a lot of African Americans were enslaved, and the so-called masters would get the best parts of the hog, and they would throw the feet, the ears, the snout, and the guts to the slaves. You know what I mean? And so that's all we had to eat. It was either eat that or starve. And so somehow by the ingenuity of innovation, the enslaved Africans made those things taste good. They turned those things into like things that are delicious, you know? But they're not the healthiest parts. And so that's why people still eat some of those things now. We still continue that because it's been passed on. So that's part of what this book talks about for children and for adults. You know, how do you keep the mac and cheese and the ribs and the burgers and the, you know what I mean, all these different things, but you shift them so that they're healthier for you, you know? And I'm only starting to promote this, but I was at this book festival and person was like, that's just like my grandmother. She had to change it. Like people were coming up to me after I read the book and was like, this is like my family story, you know? So that was really great. So it seems like it's starting to have a little connection to people. But that's a little bit about that. Yeah. And the other thing I want to say is that, well, go ahead. Well, yeah, I just want to say that like, it's really interesting. Like this up until this point has been private for me. Like I eat almost a vegan diet. And I try to drink a lot of water. I try to be as healthy as I can, but I haven't really had any artistic pieces about that so much. I had a solo piece called Flow, maybe, 21, 22 years ago. There was one character that kind of talked about that for like a couple minutes. But besides that, it hasn't really been my charge. Like some people, this is their charge. They write books about plant-based eating and that kind of stuff. But it's only been a private thing for me. But when this came out in Atlanta, the idea just came to me. And so it's been exciting to kind of explore a side of myself that's dear and important to me, but I haven't really put it in a play or put it in a book or something like that. So that's been kind of fun and new.
Oh, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. And thank you for sharing that kind of, that's really an intimate piece,
Mm.
which makes me think even more of you as the little boy, right? Because this is your like, it's a fresh little, a piece of yourself because you share
I
so
guess so.
much of yourself in your work. And, one of the things I loved here, the little boy is saying, that the food is healthy but not delicious. But then by the end, he's
Right.
saying it's delicious. And
That's right.
and then it's also that cultural piece of the grandmother then says, you're going to have to show me, or we're going to have to learn this together,
That's
how
right.
to cook this food.
That's
And
right.
so that's like such a reaching down across generations of, the young people sharing and teaching with the elders, and the wisdom is going both directions.
That's right. That's right.
It's so beautiful. The writing, Will. I mean, you're a writer. Obviously, you're a writer. You're a playwright, a poet. You kind of are the progenitor of the hip hop movement, at least one of them.
Hip hop
And
theater.
and,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, hip hop theater, and sorry, hip hop theater, yes.
There
And
you go.
so, as I was reading this, I'm like, I'm feeling the rhythm, and I'm hearing the language and the poetry of it, and I was like, I want to hear Will read some of this. So could you
Okay.
read just like a little
Yeah.
excerpt, maybe just share with
Yeah.
us how it sounds in your head when you're writing your work?
Yeah. I'll read a little excerpt of it. Should I show the pages? Just read. Let's just read it. Huh? So this is when the boy is already out in the community with his mother. Actually, I'll see if you can see it. It goes,
Yeah, show up. Yeah, they're
we
so
go to
beautiful,
Queen.
these
Yeah,
pictures.
thank you. So it goes, that's what, yeah, our Gregory Christie. It goes, we go to Queen Wraps with their big old green and red wraps stuffed with couscous and the thing like spinach called kale. We get one so Nana can taste one. So much healthy food. Mama says delicious food. I say healthy food in the West End. We go to a buffet where the gravy is savory like Nana's, but the gravy is made of mushrooms. Really? I don't even like mushrooms, but I like this. There's yumminess in the West End.
It's just so, I love it. I love it. Have you read this with your children or to your children?
I have. I mean, they're older now. They're about to go to college, so we're doing college stuff. So, but I did read it to a nephew of mine who was here from Las Vegas. I gave him a book to go take it to school, and they were very happy when this came out. And it was really interesting. I mean, because just long story short, so it was out locally in Atlanta. Like I said, it was received well, but it was during COVID. And I have a friend who's actually a friend of my wife's, who's a literary agent. So I sent her the book, right? And then she was like, she looked it up. She's like, I love this book. She was like, but this kind of thing is not selling right now of like going out in your neighborhood. Because this is like in the fall of 2020, everyone was home. They were like, so she was like, we're looking for things like stay home and bake bread. You know what I mean? Because then no one's going out. She's like, I can't say. I was like, okay, no problem. It was, whatever. And then I'm going to say maybe about a year and a half later, she emailed me out the blue and was like, hey, I think there's a market for this now. People are starting to get back out. I want to see, I'm going to New York. I'm going to see what I can do. I'm like, sure. And I was excited about that, but I was like, I don't know if it's going to go anywhere because, I don't know. So she goes to New York and she's like, hey, I got 2 companies interested. She's like, I think we got a little bidding war going on. I'm like, what? And they were like the 2 biggest companies in the world. It was Simon and Schuster and it was Penguin Random House. I was like, oh my God, it's incredible. So we met with each of them. And I decided to go with Penguin Random House. The vice president there, Sonali Fry, is just a real heavyweight. But you never know. It's really weird. I tell a lot of my students, a lot of people want to get into film and television, and that's a great medium. But when you're working in the mainstream, and people should do that, you don't own the material, Right. So the idea is that you're supposed to make a lot of money, but unless you're like Chandra Rhimes, you don't own it. So Lauren, if you write something about your mother, and they produce it, they can fire you and just do something else, have your mother doing all kind of crazy stuff on stage. Playwriting, you don't always make as much money. Of course, Lin-Manuel Miranda, there are exceptions to that. But you don't always make as much, but you own the work, I had a big show of my play last year. And this is a play I wrote like 10 years before, like 7, 8 years before. And this guy was like, hey, I love the play. I want to do it in LA. And now we're trying to, bring it to Broadway or whatever. And it's like, but I owned it. You know what I mean? I owned it. So all that to say, this book, you never know. I mean, I wrote it and it kind of sat dormant for a year or two. And then it's just having its own life. So anyway, that's the long way of saying
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that you had written it during COVID and that it came out locally, and now it's getting a big
I wrote
lift.
I wrote it in 2019 when everyone was out and stuff, but then it came out locally, to your point, in June of 2020 during COVID. So when I wrote it, everyone was out and about. But by the time I went from the writing to the pushing, it was like the world changed, you know what I mean? So I still think it would have been a good book during that, but I guess they felt like it's hard. Children would read it and be like, yeah, I want to go out now too. And parents would be like, well, we can't go out now. We can't go out. So it wasn't working.
Right. Well, that's great that it's getting picked up now and spread around. And, you've got lots of little things snuck in there. I mean, again, the drawings you have to just get a copy of this book. The art is everywhere. It's so beautiful. And you sneak some things in, like the mother brings recycled bags, and you don't hit anyone over the head with it.
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You don't hit anyone over the head. It's just in there. Right. So it's like, it's just quietly putting in your point of view of how you want cultural changes to happen. And of course that's like a global thing, but I love that you snuck that in there.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. It's really great. So I guess I'm wondering, like, what is your vision for this? What is your vision for the book? If you what do you want this to do? You want this to be in every bookstore, every library? Do you want book clubs with kids or cooking clubs? Or what do you envision with this?
I think all that stuff. The book just came out. I'd love this book to start a national conversation, or be part of a continuing national conversation about the way we eat, and you don't have to be vegan to eat more vegan food. You know what I mean? I'm not suggesting here that everyone needs to be vegan, but it can be healthier. And so it's just about maybe rebalancing, maybe not having a big portion of meat at every meal, possibly, So that's what I'm hoping for. Yeah, I'm hoping it's in bookstores. I'm hoping I do more appearances. Eventually, I'd love to see some kind of I did a presentation at a festival here in Orange County, and someone was like, I can see you having your own show. I mean, that would be cool to have some kind of show, because, I come from a music and theater background, creating different characters, and we're a ways off from that, but that would be kind of cool, because I'm good on the stage. And so I feel like I do, reading the story becomes theatrical. I went down there and read something. I did a little impromptu rap about vegan food. It was my first time, and it felt really good. And it seems like people were connecting with it, even though it was a new arena for me, So yeah, all those things would be great. I'm glad you said the cooking club, because also in the book, there's a recipe given by Chef Bryant Terry. Bryant Terry is a renowned vegan chef. Actually, now he's a chef of all kinds of things, but he came up as a vegan chef, really renowned. He was in town a few weeks ago at the Hammer Museum. He did the whole menu for the restaurant, gave us free food. It was great, and he spoke with what's her name? Who's a maverick up from the Bay? Alice Waters? Alice Waters?
Yeah. With the
Alice
restaurant
Waters.
and
Alice Waters.
Yes, the school kid.
Yeah. So Alice Waters and Brian Terry had this one-on-one conversation with Billie Eilish's mom, which is kind of random. It's LA, she's doing her thing. And it was great. So he's the one, she was great too. I forgot her name. But anyway, but he was the one that put that recipe in there. So after you read the book with your children or with your niece or with your stepchildren or with friends, children, whatever, then there's a recipe in there for coconut mango ice pops. So it's an easy thing that you can then read the book and then make this really delicious vegan treat that we mentioned in the story. You can then make it on your own. So it's kind of like a little more proactive in that way. You can read it, then you can kind of do your own thing with it. So yeah,
it's interactive. I mean, I could see the next thing being like the cookbook companion, right? Because there's so many things, right? Like there's so many amazing things in there. And for all of us that, I'm also trying to, I'm not vegan and I don't think I ever will be.
Yeah.
But I eat plant-based a lot and more. And I love to be able to, sort of make some of these things myself, because my problem is making them taste good. I can make plant-based things, but they don't necessarily taste good. And who wants to eat that, right?
Yeah. Well, check out Bryant Terry the guy who makes the recipe there, he has a number of vegan cookbooks that are really critically acclaimed. So Bryant, Bryant, Bryant Terry. So for all your listeners and viewers out there, but he has a few like really great vegan soul food books, and also just vegan books and our soul food. And you just follow the recipe and you can figure it out. Some are easy, some are harder. But yeah, that's the thing. This book and myself too, I'm not one to preach. I mean, for me, I was vegan for a number of years, and then I found that my life was so busy and hectic. And I talked to a friend of mine, like I said, that worked at Rainbow, which is kind of like the quintessential like health food store, the flagship health food store that come before Whole Foods, And she was like, you can be vegan and get everything you need. She's like, but it's really hard. It's really hard. You have to really be on it. So then I started to like eat a little bit of fish, a little bit of seafood every once in a while. So I don't do dairy, eggs, cheese. I don't do chicken. So I'm almost vegan, but I do a little bit of that once a week, just to get a little protein. You know what I mean? So this book is not about preaching that you have to do that. It's just, what is your balance of it? You know what I mean? The other thing, since you asked, is also like, what kind of meat are you eating? You know what I mean? Like, if you're eating meat from the supermarket that's been dyed and has a whole bunch of hormones, that's different than if you're up in some Montana farm and you're eating chicken or goats or cows from the farm. That's a lot healthier. You know what I mean? That's a big difference because, not to get all preachy, but the hormones, they put to fatten you up and pump you up, and you take that in your body. I don't mean like occasionally, but if you're eating that every day, that can have a detrimental effect on somebody. So to me, it's also like, what kind of meat are you eating? Now, obviously those organic, free range meats are not cheap. They're usually more expensive.
Right.
But if you can get that kind of thing, or get eggs from a farm, or that kind of thing, that's actually that can actually be pretty good, still in moderation, So that's my philosophy.
Well, and the costs of all of those things are artificial, right? Because of all the subsidies that the government gives. And you brought this topic up in the book about eating and for health and diet for Nana, right? So she's sick and she wants to get healthy, and that's definitely one way to do it. And a vegan diet is, by many metrics, a healthier diet. But there's so many other things about veganism that make it a choice that people take, whether it's ethical, environmental. I mean, there's just so many. So you really kind of bring, even though you bring this one angle, if people are going to, there's one part where the little boy is like, how do you say that? Veg. Like he doesn't know what that word is. And then the mama tells him. And he's like, oh, okay. So it's bringing potentially this new idea of what this is. And then people can do their own research.
That's great. You really read the book. That's great. I really appreciate that. You read it, but you really read it. Like, you're pointing out some things that, we worked on and edited and changed. And so I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I really liked, I know how much time and effort goes into writing a book, and it's exquisite, and it deserves that attention. So yeah, absolutely. It's worthy of that for sure.
Appreciate that.
You're all. I'm going to take this chance because you're all happy with me now. I might switch gears, but put you on the spot. But you did just say that you did this impromptu vegan rap when you were somewhere on stage, and I don't know, but Will, we've got you on our podcast, and I would be remiss if I wouldn't just at least put the offer or request out there to give us a little.
Let me see. All right, give me two foods. Give me two foods.
Okay, bananas, chocolate.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, listen. I don't know if we can clap. I don't know if we can I don't know if the hand snaps the same. Check it out, y'all. Check it out. Not ignoring these cool words from the girl Lauren. We're gonna do it like this. Check it out. Put you in the mood. This the favorite food now. In my smoothies, I do like bananas. I get hella banana from here to Savannah. And chocolate is dark and brown. I put it on some ice cream and then I go to town. But ice cream's got to be soy or coconut or cashew. Gesundheit. I thought you knew I sneeze and breathe. Check it out, y'all. I say please when I get my vegan cheese on the pizza and on the yogurt and on the milk. I'm doing it like that, and I'm in the mood with my favorite vegan foods. Hey, and you don't stop. Lauren and Will Power gonna rock the rock. All right.
Oh my
That's some old school rap. My son was here and said, that was good. It was old school though. It was old school.
That was awesome. Oh man, that was so, I'm
was fun.
so glad you just did that.
Thank you.
Oh
Thank you,
man.
Lauren. Thank you.
Wow.
That's for you.
So,
That's
you
for
know,
you.
oh, I love that. That is the best. That's the best gift ever. Man, I love it. Lauren and ignoring. I like that.
Lauren and
Dude, that's
ignoring.
good.
Lauren and ignoring. Come on. I didn't want to say snoring.
so-
Okay. And you're not boring, so really-
yeah, that's good. That's
you're
good.
the
You did
opposite
like
of boring. In case snoring, so Lauren, no ignoring.
Oh man, that was beautiful. You know, it kind of leads me. I want to talk. This is sort of tangential to this book, but you are such a creative. I mean, you are a creative. There's not even a person after that. You are a creative, and you teach that. You teach, but you also are still putting your own works on stage. Maybe we could talk just for a little bit about Memnon. I read a bunch of reviews about it. I wish that I had been in LA and could have seen it. I sent some people to go see it.
Oh,
I hope
thank
they
you.
went. Can you do you want to just share for just a little sidebar about that play and how you feel about it? And
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity. One of the things, not the whole thing, but one of the big things I'm really excited about as a writer is finding old stories that people don't know and bringing them back to life, or historical figures that people know, or canons of work that people know or think they know, and finding something in it that that people have forgotten, you know what I mean, and bringing it back. So basically, I'm really a fan of Greek mythology. I love it. You know, I've done something with it. I did this piece called The Seven that is considered one of the kind of precursors to one of the first kind of foundational hip hop theater pieces. It was an adaptation of the story of Seven Against Thebes by Aeschylus, which concerns itself with the sons of Oedipus. You know, Oedipus was cursed, but then he curses his son. So, but it was done in like a kind of a hip hop style, like, you know, so people had like Fat Farm togas and people like, you know, booed Apollo at the Apollo and all this kind of stuff. And it kind of did well in New York and some different places. But I've always been a fan. So I was approached by the Classical Theater of Harlem, which is this really amazing theater company in New York City. And they were like, have you heard of Memnon? I was like, Agamemnon? He's like, no, Memnon. So if you know the Trojan War, Memnon was a king that Troy called to help save them. They were on the verge of being destroyed. Hector had just died. So this is basically right after the Iliad, if you're familiar, if you and your listeners are familiar with the Iliad. Hector just died. And I always thought after the Iliad, you know, the Trojan horse goes in there and then the Odyssey and that's it. But there's a critical chapter in the middle where they call this guy Memnon to come to rescue Troy. And Memnon is an African king from Ethiopia. And I was like, what? I didn't know there was African people in the Greek canon. I did know that, you know, Africa, particularly Egypt, had influenced Greek culture, you know what I mean? But I didn't realize that in Greek mythology, there were actually African and some Asian figures that were there. And so when I started to read, I was like, how come there's never been nothing on Memnon? You know what I mean? Right, yeah. So I wrote a play about Memnon, and I wrote it not in a hip hop style, but you talk about rhythms. I wrote it as if we found the original Memnon play, because there was an original epic poem called the Aethiopis, like Ethiopia, but it's lost. Aeschylus and the great Sophocles both had plays about Memnon, and we think they may even had trilogies about Memnon, but it's all lost. So I wrote this from the perspective of what if we actually found the original and we translated it into English. So it's written kind of like in a really archaic, like, you know, hexameter. I wrote it in hexameter, like, you know, a style. And the feel is supposed to be that you kind of found it and translated it. So that's a little bit about Memnon. And we've gotten a lot of excitement around it. It's like people are saying like there's some like scholar that studied at Oxford was like, this is the first play about Memnon in 2,000 years or something like that, which is crazy to think of, you know, and because again, we can go on for days, but basically the Greeks revered him. He was a figure that was equal to Achilles, Helen, Hector. So did the Romans, but after that he disappeared. I kind of think I know why, but you know, we talk about that later. And so it's like bringing it up. And now that I've done more work, I think I'm going to do a trilogy of plays, because there's a number of African figures like Andromeda, like Atlas was black. I don't know if you knew that. Medusa was black.
No.
There's even some evidence that suggests that Medea was black. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but according to Herodotus, they were like they were Colchians from Colchis, but they had migrated up from Egypt. Anyway, it's a lot there. So
Yeah.
I'm having fun with it. It did really well out in LA. And as a writer, as you know, you get your book coming out, hopefully it do well. Hopefully my stuff goes well, but you never know. And I was nervous as everything because like, I know people would be like, don't mess with the Greeks. I didn't know, but it was received really well. We had like full houses, excellent reviews, people sparking kind of what you talked about the children's book. We did that locally. People were talking about it online. It was really great. And we're going to transfer it to New York in the summer. So I know it's still kind of far from where you are, but if you can come out, and the summer one is a free production. It runs in the park for like 3 or 4 weeks, and it's free in July. So I'm really excited about it. So that's a little bit about Memnon, and just my excitement about Greek work. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. Is it with the public theater, the Shakespeare in the Park, kind of part of that?
So there's a couple of Shakespeare in the Parks now. There's the public theater, which is the real foundational one, but Classical Theater of Harlem does a big production in the park every year.
Oh, awesome.
In Harlem, and it's really prestigious now. And people are saying, in no district, because public theater is it's one of the great theaters, but people are saying this is like how public theater felt like 40, 50 years ago. Like it's scrappy. Nice. There's like congresswomen sitting next to like winos. You don't have to get a reservation. I mean, it's like, it's really, they always get write-ups in the New York Times. And I mean, it's really prestigious. It's up in Harlem. It's in the summer. It's just really nice. So they do a few things with the summer show is their big show. And so we did something together in 2021. But this is a piece that they commissioned. So it was a co-commission between the theater here, the Getty Villa, and them. So I'm excited about that. And our goal is to do all, like I said, to write a trilogy and then one day perform all 3 of them. You know what I mean? Like in rep about these different, about the African presence, in Greek mythology.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Gosh, I can't wait. That's incredible.
So come on
out.
Come on out. How often do you go? How often do you go in New York?
I come east a couple times a year. I'm usually down in, or more north, usually up in New England, but I have to get to the city. I've got to get to the city. So maybe that'll be the impetus.
It's going to be in July, I think, after the 4th. Come on, everybody. After the 4th, Memnon, NYC.
We'll put that in the show notes. 100%. We'll put that in the show notes. Okay. I want to let you go, but I want to wind down with one other question that's kind of been on my mind since, we've talked now. This is our 3rd conversation that we've done recorded like this for an audience. And, but in between that, we've also talked and emailed and, shared a lot about creativity and how creativity really is such a force for transformation, for healing, for personal growth, for just kind of being able to get out of a situation and into a new situation. You need an act of creativity to do that. It's a strong force in evolution. It's like how we make the jumps in evolutionary process is with an act of creativity. And so I know that you're also a teacher. And so I wondered if you could share with us, because oftentimes on these podcasts, we share like little techniques or energy things that you can do to calm you down or, bring up more energy. But I wondered if you could share maybe an exercise that you could give our audience to help spark some creativity, maybe for whatever reason a person has. Maybe it's a healing path that they're on or a project that they've got that they want to kind of go on through. I just wondered if you could share something, maybe even that you share with your students.
I would say in brief, and this I do a little bit, but I get this a lot from my wife because she works like in the wellness world, and she does mostly stuff with tech companies and stuff like that. But she works a lot of different like realms in that. But it's just like envision what you want and then breathe through the fear. Don't run from the fear. Think about the fear. Like if the thoughts coming up, like let it come up and then breathe and let it go. That's something, because a lot of times we stop ourselves. You know what I mean? There's a lot of different things about craft that I teach or the art, and we can get into that later. But just like that's what I say. Like it's hard to do. I'm not saying I'm always successful, but like breathe through the fear. Don't run away from the fear. Don't put it out of your mind. Let it come if it comes, and then every time it comes, just give it a space and then breathe it out. Give it a space and breathe it out, and eventually it'll get smaller, hopefully, and you'll be able to go towards what you want. And it's tough. It's scary being an artist. You know what I mean? It's scary. Like, even though I'm fairly established now, it's like, you're putting out this work that you sweated on for months, sometimes years. You never know, but the joy that you get from being an artist, to me, exceeds the fear of and the trauma of being an artist. You know what I mean? And it's not for everybody, not for everybody. You know what I mean? Some people don't want to put themselves out there like that, which is you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's not for everybody. It takes a certain kind of, not insane, but just I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? I'm just going to do it, to go out there like that. But the same thing with you, starting a business, having a company, it's like, it takes a lot to be like, okay, I'm going to do this, especially if it's, I don't know your situation, but especially if it's something that's like also sustaining you, financially. It's a lot to be like, well, my idea, my creativity, as you said, is I believe in enough that I'm going to do that. I'm not saying everyone should just quit their job, just cold turkey, but that takes a lot. So it's a great joy to be in this position, even though it definitely comes with its blows. It's great to be here. I wouldn't change it for anything else.
I love that. And I love that you shared a yoga technique, really.
Oh, I guess that's, you're watching
right?
probably know all that more than me then. Yeah, I guess that's true. Right.
Yeah, like feel the emotion, like not deny any emotion, you feel it and breathe through it. And then you find your way forward, whatever process that you're working on. That's really wise. Everyone, if you have not gotten a copy yet while we've been talking, I hope you all went online and ordered this while we've been talking. Nana's new soul food. It's beautiful. It is powerful, and it has a really important message. Thank you, Will Power, powerful man, for sharing this with us and for sharing yourself today.
Thank you so much. Anytime. Love to all.
Yeah.
Alrighty, Energy fans, that's a wrap on another positively charged episode of Energy Works. Lauren, this is the part where we get to use our energy puns.
It's been electrifying, hasn't it, Blaine? We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have.
If you're feeling amped up and you want to keep your energy flowing, be sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform.
And we'd love to hear from you. So please take a moment to leave us a review. Your feedback helps us continue to deliver content that resonates. So light up our inbox.
And spark a conversation with your friends to tell them about us. And we'll see you next time on Energy Works.